Hello everybody, my name is Christine and I am here to talk about the Constitution of the United States because it is the 100th anniversary, not 100th, 250th anniversary of the Constitution. Well, not the Constitution either, it's the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. The Constitution was written in 1787 at the Continental Congress, the First Continental Congress, and it was written over a hot summer with a bunch of men sitting around, walking around, talking, writing letters, and just trying to make things better for the new United States. And so far we have finished Article 1 and we have finished Article 2. And Article 1 was the legislative branch, where we learned about the Senate and the House, where the Senate's the upper chamber and the House is the lower chamber, and the Senate is 6-year term with only 2 senators for each state, and the House has 530, 580, 500, a lot more. Because that's done by the population of the state, but they capped it. And so there's approximately 1 representative for every 710,000 people. And then we finished the executive branch, where we talked about the president and vice president and cabinet members a little bit. And now we're going to talk about the third part, which is the judicial branch. And Article 3, Section 1 starts with, "The judicial power of the United States shall be vested in one Supreme Court, and in such inferior courts as the Congress may from time to time ordain and establish. The judges, both of the Supreme and inferior courts, shall hold their offices during good behavior, and shall, as stated at stated times, receive for their services a compensation which shall not be diminished during their continuance in office." Okay, so there's going to be a Supreme Court and then inferior courts, which we call lower courts. Now we don't say inferior. And judges shall hold office during good behavior, meaning their good behavior. And shall at stated times receive for their services a compensation which shall not be diminished. And that just means they're putting it like that so that a judge cannot be punished for not voting in a way that somebody would like for them to vote. So this does not set the size of the court, of how many people were in court. It has been increased over time, and people are talking again about the possibility of increasing the amount of people on the Supreme Court, and some people think that it's a good idea, and some people think that's not such a good idea. Also, I'd like to say that the president nominates, but the Senate confirms who's going to be in the Supreme Court. And I also want to explain about Supreme Courts. All of our states have a court system that mirrors the United States court system, or federal court system. And so sometimes people might get a little bit confused if they hear something about, oh, the Supreme Court said, when it's like, well, which Supreme Court? Is it the Supreme Court of Illinois, Indiana, or the United States? And they all have districts, and originally there were 13. Now there's 850 federal districts and 500 federal courthouses. It's kind of cool. So we live and grow, and everything grows with it. So when you're listening to things on a newscast or reading something, again, always try to think ahead of time. Was this a state court, or was it a federal court? And the districts, and it gets a little confusing, and so it's best that if we are interested in such things, that we go, when we look up or when we hear something, we try and find out a little more information to make sure that we're hearing it correctly, because that can get very confusing if you're not paying attention. Okay. So the appointment is for life, and there's controversy over that now, and some people are saying that maybe 20 or 30 years is long enough. That life, oh, excuse me, I'm sorry, I've been coming out here at night to do this, and yes, I'm a little tired tonight. Some people are thinking that maybe a life term for the Supreme Court is a bit much. Some of the other courts are also for life, depending upon which ones they are. So that's just one of the other things that are being discussed, and maybe you have an opinion about that one way or another. I do think that there should be a reasonable term on that. I think 20 years is okay. Any less, and then I guess you get into the fact of, well, they wanted it to be for life, but back then it was probably 20 years by the time they got on. And nowadays it could be so much more than that. And I don't know. I just think that sometimes change is good. It's not too good to have people in one position for too long. But you don't want to have it so that it's not cohesive either. And if there's too much change, then there's no cohesion in something. And in a court system, you want that to be true. Okay, so the next thing is that the judicial power shall extend, this is section 2, the judicial power shall extend to all cases in law and equity arising under this Constitution, the laws of the United States, and treaties made or which shall be made under their authority, to all cases affecting ambassadors, other public ministers, and consuls, to all cases of admiralty and maritime jurisdiction, to controversies to which the United States shall be a party, to controversies between two or more states, between a state and citizens of another state, between citizens of different states, between citizens of the same state claiming lands under grants of different states, and between a state or the citizen thereof and foreign state citizens or subjects. So part of that has changed a little bit, and I'm not going to go into the exact details, but basically it's saying that the federal courts are taking on, like, all right, if you're in a state, it's a state problem, but if you're in a state in another state are having a problem, then that would be taken up by the Supreme Court of the United States. Controversies to which the United States shall be held party. That means that if there's someone's like suing the United States or pressing a law against that, then they would have something to do with it. The controversies between two or more states, between citizens of different. The ones with the people, between the people and the states have. I'm pretty sure that's the one that's gone now. I didn't write down all of it because there was a lot. So if you want to know more about that, you can look that up yourself, because it got a little controverted, and I'm not all that interested in in it at that point. I'm just trying to give you an overview of what this means. I don't want to go into minutia and minute details. So the other thing is that the laws have to be it has to be an actual case. It can't be something that they think might be an actual case. It has to be an actual case that's going on that they get involved in. Okay, the next part says, in all cases affecting ambassadors, other public ministers, and councils, and those in which a state shall be party, the Supreme Court shall have original jurisdiction. So that means it starts in the Supreme Court, original jurisdiction. All their cases before mentioned, the Supreme Court shall have appellate jurisdiction, both as to law and fact, with such exceptions and under such regulations as the Congress shall make. So appellate jurisdiction is the lower courts, which can then bump it up. But the caseload for the Supreme Court, you would think, okay, you make this document. They spent months making this document, and they try and put everything they can in this document. And I've been talking for days now, or a couple more than 2 hours worth of video. But I took a couple law classes when I was in high school and college, and I've been to the law library in Chicago. Beautiful, beautiful law library. Windows, you can look out, but the amount of books in there is staggering. Now, of course, that was, we don't want to say how many years ago, but there's a lot of laws. Since then, it's probably twice as many laws. And here, I got, a dozen pages for the Constitution here. It's just a dozen or so pages. And interpreting it is where all of this legal stuff gets in, because when you go to court, you have a lawyer. The lawyer is interpreting the facts as you see fit because you're hired the lawyer, and it goes up against another lawyer who's doing the same thing and says, no, I don't see it that way, I see it this way. And then the judge is sitting in the middle. And when you go to law, when you go to court, you could say, I'm looking at it from the point of view of this case that was settled, or of that case that was settled. And so now you have years and years and years of case law where cases have been brought up, and it's already been decided, well, when you look at it like this is what this appellate court has said. But they could say, but that's not right. Now we want the Supreme Court to look at it. Supreme Court's docket is very full, and so they only take so many cases because they don't have time to read into all of the cases. So when you're setting all of this up, you have it says the case can go to a state district court and then to their state Supreme Court. Some in the U.S. district courts to the U.S. Supreme Court. There are also Court of Appeals, which means that you say, I don't agree with this ruling, and the appellate court looks at the fairness of the trial. So you say, I don't agree, I don't think this was done right, I think that a juror did this, or they didn't follow this rule, or something or other, and then they decide whether or not that's going to be looked at to cause a mistrial and to retrial. So all of this is also within the judicial part, but it's just so, there's just a lot of moving pieces. Okay, so the next is the trial of all crimes except in cases of impeachment shall be by jury, and such trial shall be held in the state where the said crimes shall have been committed. But when not committed within any state, the trial should be at such place or places as the Congress may by law have directed. And that has to do with maritime law, which is different than law here, or it's held up differently. But what this basically says is that all federal crimes shall be by jury instead of just judge. You can have a jury trial for the federal crimes, which is good, because they figure that when you have a jury trial, your jury of your peers, that it's fairer, because the people who live in and around you are looking at what is said during the trial, and they can decide what happens. Okay, section 3. Treason against the United States shall consist only in levying war against them, or in adhering to their enemies, giving them aid and comfort. No person shall be convicted of treason unless the testimony of 2 witnesses to the same overt act, or on the confessions in open court. Boy, the language sure has changed in 250 years. Basically, what they're saying is war against the United States would be treason. Adhering to their enemies, I'm guessing that would be like switching sides. Giving them aid and comfort. If you're in the middle of the war and you give someone aid and comfort. But also state secrets. That's what most treason's done now, is that you're giving state secrets away, which are not actually states. It's actually federal, but they call it state secrets, and confusing, I know. But that's what more people in recent years have been tried for treason, not for taking up arms against the state or the United States. Although some people are saying that on January 6th that did happen, and I'm not going to discuss that here. But I'm just mentioning the fact that there are people who say that. I don't want this to be a political thing. I want this to be a nonpartisan expression of what the Constitution is, reading the Constitution and kind of just going over. Okay, the last thing in Article 3 is Article 3, Section 3. The Congress shall have the power to declare the punishment of treason, but no attainer of treason shall work corruption of blood or forfeiture except during the life of the person attained. Boy, don't you love those words? All that really means is, if you are the person who has committed treason, you are the one who gets punished. Not your family, not your friends, not your coworkers, not your buddies down at the bar. You, and only you. You're the one who did the crime. You're the one who gets punished, unless it's found that others around you have also committed treason, and they will be punished too. So this is running a bit long. We're already going to be at 20 minutes tonight. But, we did finish the entirety of Article 3, which is a lot shorter than the others. But, my goodness, it's short on this page. It doesn't even take up an entire page. And you can see my notes I wrote on there. But like I said, the law library has thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of books, I'm sure, on law. So that just goes to show, although this is short, the law is very long. And it's actually interesting. Although you may not believe that. Well, at least I find it interesting. Frustrating too. So thank you so much for listening, and I'm going to leave you here tonight, and tomorrow we'll pick up with Article 4 for sure, and maybe Article 5. I don't know. We'll see how much information. I'm doing my best to find information that helps to explain this in words, and it's done up by like, I've done Wikipedia. I've gone to like Congress has theirs, and just a whole bunch of different websites. And maybe tomorrow I'll write down all the different websites I've been using to go over and kind of read what they have to say to try and help me explain this in plain English. But you can also go online and do that yourself, but at least you know I want to give them credit where credit is due, that we have been using some of their words and ideas. And as always, with anything, as a lawyer will tell you, all of this stuff is in their interpretation, and then my interpretation of what this means. Your interpretation can be different. It doesn't mean that anybody's right or wrong. It just means it's different. So thank you again for watching, and I hope to see you again. Remember to leave a comment, like, and follow, and bye for now.